people do not know what their most interesting stories are. Okay, so Exhibit A, Graham Gladwell, tells me the following story. It's quite a long story, you'll have to bear with me. My father marries my mother in 1958. My mother's Jamaican, my father's English. Mildly radical acts at that time. They moved back to Jamaica. He's teaching at the University of West Indies. And he needs to get access to a library book for his research, a mathematical text. It's not in the library at the University of West Indies. He canvasses the United States and discovers it is in the library of Georgia Tech. He writes Georgia Tech, says, "Can I use your library?" They say yes. But then only later does he realize that the permission was granted too hastily, and Georgia Tech is then sent into a panic because, of course, it's 1959, and Georgia Tech is a segregated institution, and they realize to their horror that they've just granted permission to use their library to someone who teaches at the University of West Indies in Kingston, Jamaica. And their only thought is, oh God, what if he's black? So this starts this frantic attempt by the administration of Georgia Tech to discover whether, in fact, my father is black. Because it's not like, you can't tell from his name. There's not like, you can't go on the internet back then and image Google Graham Gladwell. So they start calling around America, sending letters, and he's in Jamaica. It's hard. You can't call Kingston, Jamaica even in that time. So panic sets in. Finally, the day before my father is set to leave for this odyssey, because it was an odyssey, get a boat and get to Miami, and then a bus from Miami to Atlanta. They track him down, like patched calls to, and my father hears his voice, "Professor Gladwell, yes, this is, Professor Smith, I have an awkward question." I was just, "Yeah, sure, fire away." "Professor Gladwell, are you white?" And my father says, "Why, yes." And the other guy goes, "Oh, thank God." At which point my father, the full dimensions of this, the full hilarious and obscene dimensions of this story unfold. So my father puts a giant photograph of my mother in his traveling case, waits till he gets to Georgia Tech, and he's, of course, taken out to dinner as the visiting professor, and all of the luminaries are around the table, so relieved to see that he's pale skinned. And midway through dinner, he pulls out a picture of my mother, says, "Gentlemen, I'm a newlywed. I'd love you to see a picture of my bride." Watches them. Now, that's an interesting story. I knew my father for 48 years before he told me that story. My point is, it never occurred to me to sit down and ask him questions about, you did marry your mother in 58. It's kind of interesting. And I think that everyone has got versions of that, but we just don't understand, because there are stories, we don't understand how great they are. And one of the simplest tasks of a journalist is just to keep asking questions until you get to those kinds of stories.